Hello, it's me again. Before we get into the techniques about hooks and prompts, remember that we are repurposing our videos to target those whom our friends wish to evangelize. These are people who are not yet renewed and who have not yet had the mindset of listening to your video during their prayer time, if they have any prayer time at all. But these are people whom our friends from Ligaya want to bring closer to the Lord. And our videos are hopefully what will get them to engage in an evangelistic conversation. Okay? So, what is our audience like? We must realize that the listeners that will be watching our videos will be coming from all sorts of experiences and mindsets and attitudes about the Lord, about prayer, about faith. So, iba-iba yan. They're not all the same type. And I'm calling them an archetype. So, each of these archetypes will most likely be driven by certain emotions and thoughts as they go through your videos. Okay? And your first task, okay, while you're planning to do this thing, your first task is to discern which of these types of people you should address in your particular message. And that's why it's important. I created this video so that you will know that there are really different kinds of types. Okay? And here I've listed nine, well, actually eight, but nine different archetypes, no? Because we're intentionally being evangelistic, we need to decide which of these boxes we are targeting for our videos. Um, so let me explain each one of them. Okay, the four on the left with the circle look very similar, and I tag them as the comfortable, the content, or the successful. They are similar if you look at it, but there are nuances. No, let me explain each of these archetypes briefly. All right. First, this group called the comfortable, content, or successful. Now, I will read what's in the message there. Many people live in a state of comfortable spiritual inertia, not going anywhere. They're morally decent, they're financially stable, maybe even culturally religious, but they're functionally indifferent to deeper truth or transformation. They're content, okay, where they are spiritually. But these are often the most difficult people to hook evangelistically because A, they don't feel lost, they don't think they need saving, and they don't view it as urgent or important, and they have inoculated themselves. They have convinced themselves that they've just had enough religion. That's why we need to evangelize them so that their faith will be renewed. Okay? Now, among these will be, first of all, the spiritually passive and nominal believer. Okay, this kind of person, this archetype, the nominal believer, they believe in God, but they see faith as a routine or a tradition. They may attend Mass, but they may lack a personal connection with Jesus. They feel that faith is not essential for daily life. I was like that before I was evangelized, actually. Then there's the good person who thinks they don't need God at all. Okay, they're spiritually numb or apathetic. They're not against God, but they feel nothing. They're neither hungry nor feel any urgency, but they live a good life. They're decent. They're law abiding. They're moral, but they don't need religion. Maybe they were raised properly by their parents, but they've never deeply considered life after death. They're just being good people. Okay? Then there's the morally upright or culturally religious. These people are good, they go to church, may even pray, but they lack transformation, so to speak. They lack fullness of life. They have strong faith, but they lack growth or deeper relationship. And perhaps they want a deeper faith, but they really don't know where to get it. Finally, there's the busy, distracted professional worker, the content. Okay, they're busy, they're overwhelmed with life space. They're not hostile, but they're inattentive. They believe in God, maybe, but they're too busy for church or prayer, and it's not priority to them. For them, it's work, career, it's raising a family, material success. They're probably stressed. I don't know, but probably feel some emptiness. Maybe we wait for until they're midlifing, but even then, it's not important to them. Okay. but because they're very busy and they're content making a living. Now on the other side, there are the hurt, the troubled, the anxious. These are people who are in pain, emotionally, physically, or relationally. They're you need to speak comfort and hope to them. In fact, many of our evangelistic events seem to cater to them because that's what you see in the posters. If you need the Lord for comfort, for peace, for joy, come to the Lord. Okay, but as you can see, there are many other kinds of uh, people out there who need to be evangelized. But these people who are hurting, troubled, or anxious, they believe in God, but they might question Him because they're continuing to suffering. Why me? Why me? Ganyan, ano? And they feel distant or abandoned by God. Okay. Then there's the skeptic or the intellectual doubter. These people, they resist all kinds of religious language. They distrust institutions. Maybe they were burned by faith in previous years. They question or criticize Christianity. They see faith as irrational or outdated, but they pride themselves in logic and science and reason to get by and to understand what life is all about. Then there's the seeker or the open-minded thinker. These are drawn to self-improvement, philosophy, spirituality of other kinds. They're not yet committed to faith under Jesus Christ, but possibly curious and open and asking. And then there's the guilty, the shamed, or those who are not living a good life but are in denial. They're guilty of wrongdoing, perhaps. They feel unworthy, perhaps. They may be burdened by past sins or hidden regrets, or they may be in denial of their sinful lifestyle. They have rationalized it, they're not suffering because of it anyway, and they're enjoying the fruits of it. So, those are the 9 archetypes that we want to address in our messages. No? Now, what's my point here? The important thing here is that you know these are all unique, and much of our messaging can be directed at one of these groups of people. You can't possibly have one message for all. Okay? It will take a different prompt or a hook to get each of these to reevaluate their position and to begin to consider what Jesus has to offer. So we want to address them where they're at, but we cannot possibly do them all in one message. So let's not try to hook everyone. Okay, it's impossible, or it will be boring. But instead, let's focus on one set of people and keep them in mind when we're composing our hooks, prompts, and messages. And in fact, when you're delivering your spiel, imagine that you are talking to a person exactly of this kind of background. Okay? Now, obviously, we want to let the Holy Spirit guide you about whom exactly you need to hear your message. Of course, if you base it on a gospel reading, the hook will most likely naturally flow from what is being said in that gospel or from what you need to emphasize in that gospel message. But please be consistent in your messaging. Avoid addressing the passage to the need of one type, but then you close with a prompt suitable for another type. It has to be clear that you're speaking to only one kind. One final note. Hopefully, your message itself will make it clear which type you are addressing. Halatang-halata, yun, no? So that the evangelists who will be forwarding your videos will give it to the right type of person. Okay. However, my advice is when we share these videos to our fellow evangelists, I advise that we accompany it with a little note to suggest what type of people we want to send this to, no? So that they don't send it to the wrong people. For example, if your message is intended to address the busy and distracted and the successful professional, you might suggest a message like this. When you're sending the video link to your to your fellow members in Ligaya. Question: do you have friends who are busy executives or career persons who have little time for spiritual matters? Here's a short evangelistic video that you can send them so that you can invite them later on to an evangelistic conversation and then attach the link. Do you understand? Okay, I hope that's clear. And Now, we will move on in our next video on how to compose hooks and prompts. God bless us all.